comes through the final corner. He started this Grand Prix in 6th place. What an absolutely phenomenal drive by Michael Schumacher. He was helped by mistakes by the Renault team, but it's given him the victory that gives him the lead in the World Championship. So Michael Schumacher has done it on home soil for Ferrari. He has won the San Marino Grand Prix to put to an end a very, very long losing streak. It's a real driver's track into the chicane. Look at that perfect positioning of the Formula One car, hoofing the throttle down the hill. What's this going to be? Oh, he's having a laugh. A 132.484. Mega Michael.
He's got to go down as one of the all-time greats.
Michael Schumacher. A name that just screams Formula One. A controversial figure, but a champion, an icon, and a role model for a ton of people, fans and drivers alike. Making a name for himself in the F1 history books, breaking records left, right, front, center, with a total of 91 race wins, 155 podiums, 68 pole positions, 77 fastest laps, and not to mention, 7-time world champion. He's up there with the likes of Sir Lewis Hamilton, Alain Prost, Sebastian Vettel, Ayrton Senna, and many more. During the span of his championship winning seasons, 5 of them were in Ferrari colors, which, as you can tell by the title and thumbnail of this video, is the main topic I will talk about in this presentation. Before I go any further, however, if you like what you're seeing so far, feel free to hit that red subscribe button so you'll be notified and up to speed with more Formula One videos like this on this YouTube channel. With that quick note out of the way, let's begin having a chat about Michael Schumacher's incredible 5-year championship run from 2000 through 2004. Starting with the year 2000. To start off the 2000 season was a smooth sailing one for Michael and the Ferrari team as a whole, having won the first 3 races in Australia, Brazil, and Imola. Followed that up with a 3rd place result in Silverstone, along with a 5th place result in the Spanish Grand Prix. Then we come to the Nürburgring, which was after the Spanish Grand Prix. It was at this circuit, its home territory for Michael Schumacher, a place where he's had succeeded multiple times, including a mega win during his Benetton days in 1995. Of course, fast forward 5 years later in 2000, Schumacher found the top step at the podium once more with a commanding drive, lead, and race win, 14 seconds ahead of 2nd place Mika Häkkinen. It looked to be the exact same result following the next round in the streets of Monte Carlo, considering having a dominant performance in the Monaco Grand Prix and led the most laps. Looking to have it all in the bag for the 2nd consecutive year at that. Things look smooth sailing. That was until the suspension gave out in the late stages, giving the race win to McLaren's David Coulthard instead. Then in Montreal, Schumacher rebounded into winning form, overcoming the tricky wet conditions in the late stages to claim victory in the Canadian Grand Prix. 8 races in the 2000 season, 5 wins already in the bag. Not to mention, has a comfortable lead of a 22-point margin in the championship standings up to this point, as the Formula One circus travels to Manicourt for the next race. It was in this race in particular where Schumacher was at his aggressive finest, so to say, much to the annoyance of David Coulthard. Unfortunately, in Schumacher's case, the engine blew up on him in the late stages on lap 59 out of 72, which made life easier for his championship rivals David Coulthard and Mika Häkkinen over at the McLaren camp to close the gap in the standings on the German. For the McLaren drivers, it only got better and better, as Schumacher was a victim of lap 1, turn 1 chaos, which were located at the Red Bull Ring, back in those days known as the A1 Ring, and his home Grand Prix at Hockenheim. After Hockenheim for the German Grand Prix, with Schumacher out of the race scoring nothing and both McLarens on the podium scoring a decent amount of points, it was nip and tuck, with the gap being shrunk by 2 points. Coulthard and Häkkinen both on equal terms with 54 points, getting closer to Schumacher, who is still ahead by again 2 points on 56. The following round in Hungary, Michael Schumacher started from pole position, but didn't get off the line quick enough considering Mika Häkkinen got the jump, and didn't look back from there and went on to win it. Schumacher tried to catch up to the flying Finn, but had no answer to stopping Häkkinen from, again, sealing the win, as well as taking over the lead in the championship table for that matter. Schumacher found himself with work to do, as 2 points separated him and Häkkinen, heading into the next race in Spa. In that Spa for the Belgian Grand Prix, most of us F1 fans mainly remember this race for Häkkinen's stunning overtake on Michael Schumacher and the backmarker of Ricardo Zonta. However, regarding Schumacher, he was the one who led the most laps in this race, leading 23 out front compared to Häkkinen's count of 21. When it counted the most in the final laps, Schumacher had to settle for second behind the McLaren when the Belgian Grand Prix concluded. From this result, Häkkinen's lead in the championship increases from 2 to 6, ahead of Schumacher heading into Ferrari territory, that is Monza. We come to Monza, where it is here another infamous moment from the 2000 season occurred, which on this particular day, history was made. Michael Schumacher dominated, leading 98% of the Italian Grand Prix. He got the job done winning the race, but this one was very special, as it was his 41st career victory, putting him equal with Ayrton Senna with that many wins at the time.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but this is your 41st victory, which puts you in equal second all-time with Ayrton Senna. Do those records mean a lot to you?
Yes, it does mean a lot to me. Sorry.
Thanks, Michael.
After Monza, only 3 races were left to go to close off the 2000 season. Schumacher was still behind Häkkinen, but not that far back, as the German was 2 points short of the lead heading into the next race, which was located at the famed Indianapolis Motor Speedway. At Indy, Schumacher was giving it everything he had to take on the win, even pushing it a bit too hard following a spin in the late stages. But at that point, it didn't matter. He still held on, had a comfortable lead, and won the race. As a bonus, his nearest championship challenger, Mika Häkkinen, scored no points following a blown engine. So Schumacher retook the lead in the championship table, with 8 points being the margin going into the penultimate round in Japan. It was here in Japan, in Suzuka for the Japanese Grand Prix, history was made once again. Michael Schumacher on pole, with Mika Häkkinen alongside on the front row. In the race itself, a similar situation happened, as reminiscent of Hungary, where it was Häkkinen with the whole shot and got the advantage, ahead of Schumacher at the start. In the first round of pit stops, Häkkinen was still able to stay ahead of Schumacher, but it was during the second round of stops when Häkkinen and McLaren blinked first. Schumacher put the hammer down in response, and Ferrari's strategy tactics were put to the test. Schumacher stayed out a bit longer than expected to maintain the lead after his second stop, which he eventually came in for his second stop on a fresh new set of Bridgestones. This strategy to stay out a bit longer paid off, with Schumacher merging back onto the track, holding on to the lead. Maintaining the lead till the end of the Grand Prix will reward him the World Championship one race early. And that's exactly what happened. Crossing the finish line, holding off Häkkinen, Schumacher was victorious at the end of the 2000 running of the Japanese Grand Prix. With it was something more special: the championship.
For a brilliant race for Michael Schumacher, who exits the chicane for the 53rd and last time to win the 2000 Japanese Grand Prix and the World Championship for the third time, to give Ferrari and Italy their dream. And look, he knows it. He is absolutely beside himself with joy.
You're great, Ross. You're great, Ross. All of you guys. Oh my God. Oh, we did it. Oh.
For the first time in 5 years, at Schumacher's expense, he was the world champion for the third time overall in his F1 career. In the case of Ferrari, this was their first Drivers' Championship after 21 long years of waiting, with the last one being in the year 1979, courtesy of Jody Scheckter. Schumacher and Ferrari were back on top of the world for the first time in a long while. Even so, there was still one more race left to close off the 2000 season, which was located in Sepang. Schumacher and Ferrari kept the momentum going, having led the most laps of the Malaysian Grand Prix from pole position, with the perfect strategy, not to mention, and not putting a foot wrong, went on to cruise to another victory, holding off a charge from second place David Coulthard. Michael Schumacher, with his win, obviously extended his lead in the standings, with the final margin of 19 points being the gap between the world champion and the runner-up, Mika Häkkinen, who won the Formula One World Championship in the last 2 seasons. This time around, it was Schumacher's turn. Michael with 108 points to Häkkinen's tally of 89. As far as the constructors goes, Ferrari got the job done, edging out McLaren by a margin of 18 points. Ferrari with 170 to McLaren's 152. As the 2000 season drew to a close, Michael Schumacher's stats from his third championship winning season are as follows, with 9 wins, 12 podiums, and 12 front row starts, with 9 of them from pole position, clocked in only 2 fastest laps, along with 4 did not finishes, leading for 548 laps, with an average start of 2.0 and an average finish rate of 5.3. Championship elite stats from a champion class act, as it was time to push the 2000 season to the side and put the F1 2000 in the museum archive to focus on development work on the F2001 car for the 2001 season, which it was another year of Schumacher's dominance in his F1 career. Another one of Schumacher's best years is what I'm trying to say, as we shift gears onwards to the year 2001. In Melbourne, to kick off 2001, the F2001 Ferrari produced was the car to have, as Michael Schumacher scored pole position, fastest lap, leading 94% of the Australian Grand Prix, and of course, scored the win. Things only got better in the next race in Sepang. Despite going off the road and almost crashing out, Schumacher still managed to dominate and lead the vast majority of the Malaysian Grand Prix and showcasing his wet weather skills, bringing his car home to victory. The following round in Brazil, Schumacher had to settle for second place behind David Coulthard. Following that was a 19th place result in Imola. That was due to a suspension problem, but nevertheless a solid start to the season. In the Spanish Grand Prix, it was a classic duel between himself and Mika Häkkinen to see who will come out on top in the end, And when the Spanish Grand Prix of 2001 did come to an end, it was Michael Schumacher on the top step of the podium, with Häkkinen absent from the podium due to a clutch failure on the last lap while leading from 1st to 9th out of the points. Just like that.
It's super disappointing. I mean, god damn it, Jesus,
Come Spielberg for the Austrian Grand Prix set at the A1 ring, it got off to a hectic hair-raising start as Juan Pablo Montoya tried a little too much to impress, and by doing so, overcooked it going into the heavy braking zone of turn 3, getting in the way of Michael Schumacher, costing them both crucial time in a potential race win for either one of them, which that honor belonged to David Coulthard at the end of the day. But that wasn't the main talking point.
Rubens, it's last lap. Let Michael pass for the championship. Let Michael pass for the championship, Rubens, please.
Coulthard's win was overshadowed by Ferrari's tactics. In other words, Rubens Barrichello was ordered to let Michael Schumacher through on the last lap on the last turn to benefit second place, to gain 6 valuable points in the championship to stay afloat in the head of Coulthard. Barrichello obeyed the order and let Schumacher pass to clinch second place at the line, and indeed managed to stay ahead of David Coulthard by a 4-point margin heading into the next race on the streets of Monte Carlo. And in Monaco, it was a Ferrari show. And in Michael Schumacher's case, redemption. Schumacher and Barrichello were the top class of the field, but when it counted the most, Schumacher held off his fellow teammate to take on the win on the Monaco street circuit for the 5th and final time, having led 72 of the 78 laps en route to the top step of the podium, and furthermore, increasing his lead in the championship table. Montreal, Canada was the next stop, where Michael started from the pole position and did have a fast car, which was a cliche sight to see, as he led the most laps throughout the Canadian Grand Prix of 2001. But in the closing stages, and during the second half, it was the younger Schumacher, that of Ralph, in the Williams, seizing the moment and holding on, keeping Big Brother at bay to secure his second career win. Michael, finishing second, earning 6 points in the process, still has the lead in the championship by 18 points over David Coulthard, going into home territory at the Nürburgring. In the European Grand Prix, Michael did what was a common sight to see, and that was stepping onto the top step of the podium, winning on home turf, leading for 99% of the European Grand Prix. And following this was another day of maximum points at the French Grand Prix, and this time was at the head of the Schumacher 1-2 finishing result, considering Ralph finished behind Michael in second place. Not to mention, as you probably guessed, Michael led the most laps. Furthermore, this result at Michael's expense increases his lead in the championship even further, ahead of David Coulthard by a 31-point margin. And speaking of, Coulthard's teammate Mika Häkkinen was able to deny Michael's quest for a three-peat of 3 wins in a row. In other words, Häkkinen dominated and won the British Grand Prix, finally having something good for once during his disastrous 2001 season. But in regards to Michael Schumacher, he settled for second place behind Häkkinen, albeit by almost 34 seconds. All the same, Häkkinen was far behind to be a factor, and Coulthard had a coming together with Jarno Trulli on the first corner on the first lap. This result damaged Coulthard's suspension, costing him dear, falling back even more in the championship, walking out of Silverstone with no points scored. now 37 points behind Michael, going into the next race, located at the Hockenheim Ring. It was here neither Coulthard nor Michael finished the German Grand Prix. David went out with an engine failure. Michael went out with a fuel pressure problem. Before all of that, rewinding to the start of the German Grand Prix, Michael did not get off the line very well and was therefore hit from the back by the Prost of the Carno Berti. From the looks of that, it looked to be just as the same as 2000 the year previous, where on the first corner on the first lap, Michael was out on the spot. But due to the race being halted because of the crash, this allowed Schumacher to run back to the Ferrari garage and jump into the backup car, and was able to start from his 4th place grid slot where he started before, but like I mentioned moments ago, during the latter stages, looked to be on course to score points until, like I mentioned moments ago, a fuel pressure problem intervened, costing him a points finish. But in the following round, things would get better at the Hungaroring. Following the Hungarian Grand Prix, Michael Schumacher was in a class of his own, having dominated qualifying time trials, dominated the race itself, leading 71 out of the 77 laps run. When it counted most, he was there at the finish line first, sealing the deal and winning the Hungarian Grand Prix. But there was more to it. It was his 51st career victory, which put him on equal terms with Alain Prost with that many wins thus far. Along with it came a 4th overall championship trophy. In other words, winning in Hungary was enough to clinch the driver's title for the 2nd consecutive year. Only this was the 2nd time in Formula One history where a driver in Ferrari colors won the championship 2 consecutive seasons, with the last one prior to this being Alberto Ascari back in the early 1950s, when F1 was in its very early days. That aside, this winning result, adding in Rubens Barrichello's runner-up finish, Ferrari not only secured the Drivers' Championship, but the Constructors as well. Indeed, they were the champions. And indeed, there was still work left to be done. Following Spa, Michael got him and the team yet another dub, after yet another dominant performance, surpassing Prost with 52 wins now. Monza and Indianapolis were 4th and 2nd respectively. And finally, there was the season finale in Suzuka, Japan, scoring yet another victory to wrap it all up. And just like that, the 2001 Formula One season concludes, with once again Michael Schumacher and Ferrari coming out on top, being for the most part unchallenged. Final margin in the Drivers' Championship with 58 points, separating Schumacher and 2nd place David Coulthard. Michael with 123 points, compare that to David's score of just 65. Pure dominance. As far as the Constructors' Championship is concerned, Ferrari outclassed McLaren by 77 points. Ferrari with 179 points to McLaren's points tally of 102. Ferrari and Schumacher do it again. Michael Schumacher's 2001 season stats look like this: 9 wins, 14 podiums, 13 front row starts, with 11 of them coming from pole position, with only 2 did not finishes, both of which were mechanical failures, clocking in 3 fastest laps, leading for 530 laps, with an average start of 1.7 and an average finish rate of 3.4. And by the way, at the conclusion of the 2001 season, Michael Schumacher at the time became the most successful point scorer in Formula One history. ever, with a score of a total of, like I mentioned moments ago, 123 points during the course of one season. Now, it was time to shift gears into the year 2002. A year that, for Michael Schumacher and Ferrari, they were playing F1 on easy mode. In other words, the 2000 and 2001 championship seasons came and went, with Michael Schumacher and Ferrari being consistent on a daily basis, taking it to a whole nother level in 2002. Even with the old chassis from the 2001 car being used from the opening 2 rounds to kick off 2002, Schumacher got on the podium with the old car. I say old considering the other teams were using their 2002 cars. Yet, you have Ferrari over here using their 2001 car and still being up front and finishing on the podium. Again, courtesy to Michael Schumacher with a win in Melbourne and a 3rd place in Malaysia. In Malaysia for round 2, like I mentioned earlier, gets 3rd place. It could have been higher than that had Schumacher and Montoya not had it coming together on the first corner on the first lap. Even with that, falling way down the order at the start following the contact, came back from the bottom and kept his head up, worked his way back to the front behind the 2 Williams drivers of his brother Ralph and Montoya, who he again made contact with early on, to score 3rd, rounding out the podium. Mind you, he has accomplished all of this so far in the 2001 chassis. I got a bit passionate there. Brazil for the 3rd race in the 2002 championship was a debut of the Ferrari F2002. It may look the same as the 2001 chassis, but the 2002 car was slightly different compared to its predecessor. For one, the 2002 car was lighter than the F2001, with the engine and the car itself having a very low center of gravity, that in turn improved handling. Not to mention the horsepower was twice as high as the 2001 car. Both sides of the 2002 car, along with the front and particularly the back, were designed as they were to maximize downforce. Aerodynamically speaking, classed the whole field. Aside from Williams, which that team had the faster and better engine, arguably. But enough talk on the aerodynamic side of things as we focus back to the 2002 season, where in Brazil, like I mentioned earlier, was the introduction of the new Ferrari F2002, which was only driven by Michael Schumacher. His teammate Rubens Barrichello still ran the 2001 chassis in this, his home Grand Prix. Would be the last time he ran the 2001 car before he himself got to drive the 2002 car the following round in Imola. But in regards to Michael Schumacher, as you probably guessed, he won the Brazilian Grand Prix, then won the San Marino Grand Prix, then won the Spanish Grand Prix. But in Austria, things get very controversial, and this is the one race from 2002 that pretty much all F1 fans remember, but for the wrong reasons.
Events of a more covert nature are unfolding on the Ferrari pit wall. Barrichello's new Ferrari contract is about to be put to the test.
For the 2nd year in a row, Ferrari tactics were played into effect, and much like 2001, Barrichello was ordered to let Schumacher pass, but this time has to forfeit and give up the lead. Having dominated the 2002 Austrian Grand Prix from start to finish, but on the last lap, on the last turn, much to everyone's horror,
it doesn't look as though there's going to be any team orders here, and nor should we ever really have believed there would be. Oh, he's getting very close to Michael Schumacher, but Rubens Barrichello comes through. He's not going to let Michael through, is he? No, they're going to... Yes, he is! I do not believe it! I do not, Adam and Eve, what is going on? Michael Schumacher wins the Austrian Grand Prix. He doesn't deserve to win it. That is outrageous.
Oh, I'm gobsmacked, absolutely gobsmacked. That is not possible, and I can't believe it's even allowed.
Barrichello obeyed and let Schumacher through to take on the win, much to the, rightfully, utter disgust from the fans in the stands and millions watching around the world. This was and is Michael Schumacher's most controversial win, no doubt. So much so, most people say that Barrichello won the race, and let's be real, the Brazilian did. But of course, in the eyes of Ross Brawn and Jean Todt, they see it differently. You can even tell from Ross Brawn's interview post-race.
Ross, Rubens had won that race, hadn't he?
Oh yes, Rubens won the race today, but in the interest of Ferrari and the Drivers' Championship, we've made the decision. We were telling Michael not to push, we were telling Rubens not to push. We were watching everything, so you can't call that a race.
The ferocity of the crowd's reaction stuns Schumacher and Barrichello.
Later on, Ferrari received a hefty fine. Not because of the team orders fiasco, but because of the podium ceremony, when Schumacher lent the top step of the podium to Barrichello, while simultaneously the German national anthem was being played, with Barrichello underneath the German flag. The finish was a show. An absolute show. It was a mess. An absolute mess. All you would hear was, rightfully, booing from the crowd post-race, podium celebration, and even in the press conference room, it was that bad. This very race I do want to touch on for a closer look episode. In other words, the 2002 Austrian Grand Prix, this one race regarding the 2002 season that we all remember is a story for another time. Now we shift gears to the Monaco Grand Prix, where Michael Schumacher had won on 5 previous occasions, and is the defending winner here. In qualifying, he set a time quick enough for a 3rd place spot on the grid. Come race day, much like in Malaysia, didn't lead a single lap, but did what he could to stay out of trouble and kept the car in one piece, to which he did. All the same, he couldn't seal the deal when the checkers flew as far as the win was concerned, as that honor belonged to David Coulthard, who dominated the day, leading every single lap en route to his 2nd and last Monaco Grand Prix win. For Michael Schumacher, he finished 2nd behind the Scot, 1 second behind the McLaren. Now we come to Montreal, where Schumacher was back to his winning ways, as he would go on to win the Canadian Grand Prix, and 1 race later at the Nürburgring finished 2nd to Barrichello. Then in Silverstone, after starting 3rd in typical cliche fashion, dominates and wins. For the 11th round in the championship center stage in Manicourt, Michael Schumacher was 1 step closer to becoming the world champion of 2002 during the French Grand Prix weekend. If one of these following scenarios come to fruition, Michael Schumacher is the world champion. When the lights went out, Schumacher wasted no time going straight to work, chasing down the Williams of Juan Pablo Montoya in the early stages. Not even a drive-through penalty for putting his wheels on the white line on pit exit could stop him, as it didn't. He still was in contention, and yet found himself behind the McLaren of Kimi Räikkönen, who, late in the race, was leading after the final round of pit stops, and looked to have his maiden win in the bag, becoming the only obstacle in the way of Schumacher's record-tying 5th world title. sure enough, as fate would have it, the Toyota of Alan McNish had an engine barbecue, spilling oil on the track, causing Raikkonen to go wide and slip, handing the lead to Michael Schumacher. Schumacher did everything he needed to do on his part, was per usual on his marks throughout the whole race, made the right move at the right place at the right time, albeit under the yellow flags when McNish's engine blew at the beginning of the second sector. But outside of that controversy, it didn't matter anyway. Why? Michael Schumacher emerged victorious, crossing the finish line in first, keeping the fin of Raikkonen at bay. Not only did Schumacher win the French Grand Prix, he also, with this, won his 5th overall championship trophy, 3 years in a row now in Ferrari colors.
That incident couldn't be further from Michael Schumacher's mind as his monumental achievement begins to sink in. The best driver, the best team, and the best car have combined to crush the opposition in record time.
With 5 overall titles now up to this point, he ties the late Juan Manuel Fangio with that many. Remarkable achievement. The best driver, the best team, and the best car was simply at the top of the board. Even though the Drivers' Championship after the French Grand Prix was wrapped up, there was still more races left to do, with 6 more rounds to go. On the newly refurbished Hockenheimring circuit, Michael Schumacher wasn't done yet and schooled the field like normal and won on home turf. His second win at the Hockenheimring, with his first dating back in '95. Then in Hungary, started second and finished second to his teammate Barrichello. Considering this 1-2 finishing result from the Ferrari team, they were able to haul enough points to officially secure the Constructors' Championship. Undoubtedly, this was Ferrari and Michael Schumacher's best season yet. And the thing is, they still continue to do their thing with 4 more rounds to go. In the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa, an event and place where Michael Schumacher got his first career start in 1991, and later on his first career win 1 year later, was the next stop. And to no one's surprise, Schumacher took pole, incredibly the first pole at the Spa-Francorchamps circuit, and also to no one's surprise, dominated the race for 98% of the Grand Prix. When the checkers flew, Schumacher was, to no one's surprise, victorious once again. This win in Belgium was his 10th in the 2002 season, surpassing the winning record for most wins in a single season. Fitting, he broke this record at a track where he made his first career start and again 1 year later his first win. And now is the first driver in Formula One history to reach double-digit numbers in the wins tally in a season. This man is unstoppable. Monza and Indianapolis finished second again to Barrichello on both occasions. But regarding Indy, things get interesting. As usual, the Ferraris dominated the day and drugged the field. Schumacher was the one who led 96% of the Indy GP. In the final laps, however, Barrichello was gaining and gaining. On the last lap, on the last turn, both Schumacher and Barrichello slowed down with the pair of them side by side. They crossed the line in a photo finish, and at that point, controversy was in the air. Some argue that Michael Schumacher slowed to let Barrichello take the win following what went down in Austria. And it was here at Indianapolis, Schumacher felt what was the right thing to do to slow down and give Barrichello the win and return the favor. Deja vu in a sense, but the only difference was that there were no team orders this time around. Either way, this time it was positive vibes with the Ferrari team. However, what actually happened as to why both Ferraris slowed and came across the line neck and neck, the reason for this was for advertising publicity for Vodafone/Verizon. According to Schumacher in the press conference room post-race, the publicity shot, quote-unquote, failed. Because, 1-2, Michael Schumacher was car number 1, Rubens was car number 2, car number 1 was supposed to finish P1, while car number 2 was supposed to finish P2. Either way, this was a badass shot in my book, regardless of where the two Ferraris finished. And quite honestly, considering the massive kerfuffle after Austria, Barrichello earned this one. And this win at Indy at the Brazilians' expense made up for what, like I mentioned earlier, what happened in Austria. The margin of victory, by the way, 0.011. One of the closest finishes in Formula 1 history, and the closest finish of the 2002 Formula 1 season. And last but not least, there's Suzuka, Japan. Michael Schumacher led 99% of the 2002 Japanese Grand Prix, and for the third year in a row, caps off the season on a high note with yet another race win, after yet another dominant and class act performance. Coincidentally enough, for the third year in a row, not only wins the season finale, but also leads the most laps after starting from the pole position grid slot. Absolutely insane to comprehend. Few other things to bear in mind that are insane to comprehend from this 2002 season. Michael Schumacher finished ahead of Rubens Barrichello by a 67-point margin. Michael scored 144 points, compare that to Barrichello's score of just 77. As far as the constructors go, well, Ferrari scored the same number of points than the rest of the field combined, with 221 points. That is the score, again, the rest of the field put together outside of Ferrari. They were that damn good, and that damn of a team to beat. By the way, before we move on, take a look at these photos of the podium celebrations from the 2002 season real quick, and just take a look at them, and tell me if you notice something. Did you catch it yet? How about now? If you paid close attention to that slideshow that just happened, you may have noticed a common trend with every race from 2002. That's Michael Schumacher on the podium. I kid you not, this man not only finished on the podium in every race on the 2002 calendar, but he also qualifies in them. First, second, and third. I kid you not, this is something that not even Sir Lewis Hamilton hasn't achieved. If you want to see someone who has had the perfect season in F1, there you go. Look at Michael Schumacher from 2002, and that tells you how much and how dominant he and Ferrari were. The force to be reckoned with, and quite frankly, impossible impossible to beat. That aside, Michael Schumacher's 2002 stats are this. With an, at the time, a record-breaking 11 wins, along with, like I mentioned a few moments ago, out of 17 races run, finishing on the podium all 17 times. Much like 2001, 13 starts from the front row, the only difference is that 7 of them came from the pole position, clocking in the most fastest laps with 7, leading for 561 laps, along with an average start of 1.8, as well as an average finish rate of 1.4. Arguably Michael Schumacher's best F1 season, period. What came before 2002, what came after? The best one, bar none. In fact, considering Michael Schumacher and Ferrari literally won the championship in both drivers and constructors on merit, a change to the point system along with a handful of new rules and regulations were put in place to give Ferrari and Schumacher one hell of a challenge to cope with for the 2003 season, which we will get into now. One of the new rule changes for 2003 was that team orders were rightfully banned. But considering how Michael Schumacher is coming into the 2003 season fresh from a stellar 2002 season, he probably won't need such a thing anyway. Especially when he clocked in the fastest lap time of them all to nab pole position from Barrichello at the season opener in Australia to kick off the new season. Once again in the old car, still using the F2002 chassis. Throughout the race, Michael Schumacher had suffered through poor pit strategies, and it didn't do him justice as parts of his barge board flew off, giving him somewhat an aerodynamic disadvantage. But in the end, he had to settle for 4th. First time he's failed to make the podium since Monza 2001. Then the following round in Malaysia, a coming together with the Renault of Jarno Trulli resulted in a drive-through penalty. An eventful day, only to end up 6th. Instead of having 1 point, unlike the previous seasons, with the change to the points format, 6th place was the result of 3 points. Then came Brazil, which this very Brazilian Grand Prix was very insane. Multiple drivers went off coming through or off turn 3. 7 to be exact. Out of those 7, Michael Schumacher was one of them, spinning and crashing heavily into the tire wall and out of the Brazilian Grand Prix of 2003. The last time he's DNF'd was Hockenheim 2001, 25 races ago. It wasn't any better for Ferrari considering Rubens Barrichello failed to make it to the finish, as he suffered a mechanical failure while leading in his home Grand Prix. Incredibly, this was the first time since the 1999 European Grand Prix both Ferraris did not finish. Now we come to Imola for the San Marino Grand Prix for the next race on the calendar. Sadly, it got off to a tragic start, as the mother of both Michael and Ralf Schumacher had passed away on the morning of the race. Racing with heavy hearts, both Schumachers pressed on and gave the fans a show they came to see. Both of them were the cars to beat, as they were wickedly fast all day. When it came down to the closing stages though, Michael had it all under control and took home the winner's trophy, securing his first win of the 2003 season, in what would be the last appearance for the Ferrari F2002. And what a way to go out with the F2002 in its last race with pole position, fastest lap, and a 1-3. The Spanish Grand Prix was the light of day for the debut of the Ferrari F2003 GA, with the GA naming in honor of Gianni Agnelli, former chairman of Fiat, who passed away in January of 2003. The development production work on the Ferrari F2003 GA was based on its predecessor, the F2002, with slight changes. Most notable of these changes were the side pods, a bit wider when comparing it to the F2002 chassis, along with a change and upgrade to the wheelbase, which was made to improve on aerodynamics. Combine that with the lower center of gravity, the car being a bit lighter and stiffer to drive, you've got yourself a handful yet a powerful package to win races with this car, while simultaneously having a very powerful 3.0-liter V10 Ferrari Type 052 engine inside the engine cover, powering this thing to its max to reach the top. On its very debut in the Spanish Grand Prix, just like in the last 5 seasons, Ferrari's new F1 car wins in its first try, courtesy of Michael Schumacher taking the top honors, starting from pole position no less, leading 94% of the Spanish Grand Prix, winning it for the 3rd year in a row. In Austria, no team orders this time, thank God. Even if they were legal, they weren't necessary, considering Michael Schumacher in his typical dominant form was on his game. Even in one of the pit stops was a barbecue-like moment with a small fire in the Ferrari pit during one of his stops, but was nonetheless leading most of the race from pole, and took home the winner's trophy in what was the last Austrian Grand Prix until 2014. In Monaco, it was a podium finish of 3rd behind Kimi Räikkönen and race winner Juan Pablo Montoya. At this point in the championship, Michael Schumacher is 4 points behind the Iceman in 2nd place, well ahead of Alonso, Barrichello, Montoya, and others by 15 or more points. Then, in Montreal, it was back to winning ways, claiming the dub, holding off the 2 Williams drivers of younger brother Ralph and Juan Montoya. With Michael's win, he now takes the lead in the championship standings ahead of Räikkönen by a close 3-point margin. In home territory at the Nürburgring, what might have been a potential podium finish slipped away as Montoya and himself came to blows yet again, which, as a consequence, put Schumacher out of podium contention, and in the end, he would rank 5th. At least he still hauled some points and maintained the points lead in the championship at the end of the day, but even so, every single race counts. Following the French Grand Prix, it was P3 on the podium, after starting in P3. Then at Silverstone for the British Grand Prix, he finished 4th, which earned him 5 points. Still holding on to the lead in the championship going into another home track, that of Hockenheimring, where it was here in the German Grand Prix he would finish 7th, which awarded him 2 additional points. It could have been higher than that had fate not intervened, when Schumacher had a left rear puncture in the very late stages. But even so, he now, at this stage, had a new challenger, Juan Pablo Montoya. Regarding the Colombian, fresh from his win in the German Grand Prix, he passed Räikkönen for 2nd in the championship race, 6 points behind the Michael, and Räikkönen 9 points behind the Michael. Hungary was a torrid time for Michael Schumacher, and at one stage ran out of fuel. Furthermore, the Bridgestone runners, while Ferrari were one of the few teams using Bridgestone compounds, couldn't get the grips with the newly surfaced Hungaroring circuit, as the Michelin runners had the correct tire setup, as far as grip is concerned. And with this result, with that being said, the Michelin runners occupied the top 7 places when the race was concluded. Michael Schumacher finishing 8th was the highest Bridgestone runner in the finishing order. But at least he still holds on to the lead in the championship standings after the Hungarian Grand Prix, but only just. 1 point separates him and Montoya, whilst 2 points separate Schumacher and Raikkonen going into the next race, which was center staged at Monza. And in Monza, it was back to doing the proper job, and that was to get the pole, dominate and leave everyone in the dust, win the race on Ferrari home soil. Check, check, boom. Michael Schumacher back on winning form. What better way to do so at the home and heart of Ferrari country? A Ferrari 1-3 at that, considering Rubens Barrichello makes the podium, finishing in third to join the party. Heading into Indianapolis, the championship was still pretty tight between the top three. Schumacher leads in the championship with a 3-point margin ahead of Juan Montoya, as well as a 7-point margin ahead of Kimi Raikkonen. So it's a 3-way battle for the title at this point. But with 2 races left, who's going to come out on top? That's the question everyone is asking. Well, at Indy, Schumacher and Ferrari breathed a sigh of relief when Montoya hit trouble. After making contact with Rubens Barrichello, spinning out the Brazilian, Montoya was handed a drive-through penalty as a consequence of this, which this ultimately ended his championship hopes, eventually ending up 6th after an eventful day for the Colombian. Michael Schumacher, on the other hand, played his cards right. Even with the wet weather conditions, it wasn't hurting his performance. He even set the fastest lap of the race. A combination of instinct and the right strategy lends Schumacher to the top once more for his 6th win of the 2003 season, finishing in front of Kimi Raikkonen, who finished 2nd behind the Michael, but by nearly 18.5 seconds. And with a mathematical chance to challenge Michael Schumacher for the 2003 title, as the gap in the standings between them was now 9 points going into the season finale in Japan. In Suzuka, things got off to a slow start, considering the worst qualifying of the season for Schumacher with a 14th place on the grid slot. It didn't do him any favors when his championship rival Kimi Raikkonen was higher on the starting grid, being 8th on the board. In the race itself, Michael Schumacher was on a charge, and while on a charge, he hit the back of Takuma Sato's BAR, which in turn damaged the front wing, meaning a new one was required. After repairs were done, Schumacher had to work his way back into the points again, merging back onto the track in last place. Despite this, with his pure talent and racecraft mastery, he did just that, making his way through the field and into 8th place, which was enough to retain the lead in the championship, scoring at least a point. Fast forward to the finish, Schumacher holds on to that 8th place, which was enough to become, for the 6th time in his career, and for the 4th consecutive year in a row, the Formula One World Champion. With a 6th championship trophy, he breaks the record for the most championships in F1, and for the first time since 1994, wins the championship without being on the podium. Unlike Adelaide that year, no controversy this time around, as Schumacher wins it fair and square. Regardless whether you love him or hate him, he sure as hell can get the job done and come in clutch at the best time, in the best case scenarios. Much like what I just talked about regarding the 2003 Japanese Grand Prix from Schumacher's perspective. After the 2003 Formula One season concluded, Michael Schumacher just managed to beat Kimi Raikkonen by 2 points when it was all said and done. Raikkonen being consistent throughout 2003, but Schumacher being a tad more consistent and being there at the right place at the right time to secure and claim the driver's title at the end of the day. As far as the constructors was concerned, in addition with Barrichello taking the checkers victorious in Japan, those extra 10 points was enough for Ferrari to maintain the lead and secure the Constructors' Championship, winning it for the 5th year in succession. Ferrari with a score of 158 points compared to Williams' score tally of 144 points. 14 points being the difference right there between the two teams at the end of the season. But in regards to Michael Schumacher, there were times where he was on it and other times where he wasn't during this 2003 season. But in the end, when it came crunch time, he delivered and brought home another championship trophy to store inside the trophy cabinet in his collection. Michael Schumacher's stats from the 2003 season look like this. With 6 wins, 8 podiums, 6 starts from the front row, in which 5 of them came from pole, clocking in the most fastest laps with 5, leading for 307 laps, with an average start of 4.3 and an average finish rate of also 4.3, with just 1 did not finish. 2003 in the books, the Ferrari F2003 GA in the museum, another piece of history to Michael Schumacher's lustrous F1 career during his time, especially in Ferrari colors. The last 2 cars provided great results and proved to be the car to beat. And more often than not, they were next to impossible to beat and catch given their insane speed. This brings us to the next and final chapter of this project, as we flip the page to the year 2004. Another year when Schumacher and Ferrari were a powerhouse yet again, and became champions yet again. This is how they did it. To start things off, let's talk about the car. The infamous, iconic Ferrari F2004. Similar to its predecessor, this car featured numerous changes. These include a more efficient gearbox, engine, a shorter wheelbase, lower center of gravity, as well as an updated rear suspension to aid tire life. To improve on handling and aerodynamics, the rear wing was revitalized, along with the side pods and barge boards. The engine, the Ferrari Type 0533 3.0 liter V10, containing a whopping 865 horsepower, was at the time brand new. However, it was limited to use 1 per race weekend, as one of the rule changes for 2004 was to use 1 engine throughout the entire race weekend. Simultaneously, Ferrari were making the Ferrari Type 053 engine twice as more efficient than its Ferrari Type 052 predecessor to cope with the new regulations and rules. A combination of the perfect engine package, the perfect car design, the perfect team, the perfect driver, being the perfect pairing, I think you get the picture, as if it was a match made in heaven. The results were mind-blowing. So much so, it even shocked Ferrari themselves. In the first 5 races to kick things off, Michael Schumacher won the first 5. 4 of those 5 opening rounds came from pole. One of them was controversial, located in the San Marino Grand Prix in Imola. On the opening lap of that particular race, Michael Schumacher and, who else, Juan Pablo Montoya made contact at Tosa hairpin. The slight contact wasn't much and didn't affect either driver's performance, considering they were still able to finish on the podium, first and third respectively. But after the race, both drivers had differing sides. Michael Schumacher stated that he didn't see the Williams on his outside as he was committed to the racing line. Montoya, on the other hand, says otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I saw his attack on the outside at braking, but then going around the corner, for me, it was... first of all, I didn't see him, but second, outside around the corner, you usually lose ground, so I didn't really expect him to be there anymore.
That, you know, I'm amazed. I actually got in front of him when we were braking a little bit. Oh no, he didn't see me there. Well, no chance. You know, you gotta either be blind or stupid to not see me, but you know, it's racing.
And by the way, this wasn't the only time the two drivers came to blows during the course of the 2004 season. In Monaco, just getting started with the second half of that race, Schumacher was on course for a potential victory, having played his cards right with strategy, especially when the safety car came out following Alonso's crash coming out of the tunnel, and Jarno Trulli forfeiting his lead to pit during the safety car episode, which this gave Michael Schumacher the lead. This lead was only temporary and sadly short-lived. While warming up his tires inside the tunnel, locks up the front, cuts right back onto the racing line, and again collides with Juan Montoya, who at this stage was a lap down. As a result of this, gets loose and crashes into the wall and was out of the race. A very bizarre yet rare mistake on Michael Schumacher's part, who was rightfully gutted after crashing out, when a win was very much on the cards and was right there. But this small mishap didn't affect his performance in the slightest afterwards, because what followed after Monaco came what can be described as the definition of unstoppable. What I'm trying to say is, following the next 7 rounds in the championship, Schumacher would go on a hot streak, winning 7 consecutive races. Needless to say, he was pretty much the face of Formula 1 all throughout the summer, winning from round 7 at the Nürburgring to round 13 at the Hungarian Grand Prix. Needless to say, no one, not even his own teammate Barrichello, could challenge him. Aside from Alonso at the French Grand Prix, which came down to pit strategy at the end, I'm pretty sure we all know who won that one, don't we? Fast forward to Spa for the Belgian Grand Prix, where it was here Michael Schumacher was on the verge of officially becoming the world champion for the 7th time, if he finished ahead of Barrichello. Even more to it, if he not only did that, but also finished on the podium. After 44 grueling laps around the daunting Spa-Francorchamps circuit, despite having a slight disadvantage on the Bridgestones, Schumacher was still able to stay up front inside the top 5 all throughout the day, and at the end of the day, finished second ahead of Barrichello. With this result, Michael Schumacher, for the 7th time in his career, 5th in Ferrari colors, was the Formula 1 World Champion. Clinches lucky number 7 at the place where he made his Formula 1 debut in 1991, where he got his first win 1 year later in 92, where he set a new record for the most wins in a season in 2002, and now, in 2004, wins his 7th in what would ultimately be his last Formula 1 World Championship trophy. And get this, wins his 7th championship in Ferrari's 700th Grand Prix. And at this point, not only won the Drivers' Championship, but also, for the 6th consecutive year, wrapped up the Constructors as well. Sheer dominance at its finest. Sheer dominance at its absolute finest. That's Ferrari for you during the early 2000s. To cap off 2004, they kept winning more races. Per usual, they kept winning more races, winning 3 out of the last 4 Grand Prix after Spa, 2 of which came in the hands of Rubens Barrichello, winning Monza and Shanghai. Michael Schumacher, of course, won yet another race, located in Japan, getting on to the top step of the podium for the 13th time in 2004, setting a new record for most wins in a season, after dominating the Japanese Grand Prix, leading from lights to flag from pole position. In Brazil, for the last race of the season, signs off 2004 with a decent but abysmal 7th place finish, 50 seconds behind the leader and race winner, Juan Pablo Montoya. But at that point, who cares? Michael didn't care, neither did his team. They had it done yet again, after dominating yet another season of F1 competition. Arguably, considering the amount of sheer pace and insane speed, not to mention consistency, many would argue that 2004 was Michael Schumacher's best season. And it's one of his best seasons, yes, but is it the best? In my opinion, it's his second best season, with his best season of all, in my humble opinion, being his 2002 season, where he didn't miss the podium once and qualified and finished every race for that matter on the podium. Literally everything went right for him that year. Even in small mishaps, he bounced back still to finish inside the podium and rack up a great finishing result. In 2004, he did the same thing, but he crashed in Monaco and therefore did not finish. Not to mention, one of these races in 2004, which was in Shanghai, he finished a lap down. In Shanghai as well, things went wrong for Schumacher actually. A technical glitch in practice, followed by a spin in qualifying, resulted in dead last on the grid slot, and in the race itself, finished 12th. Like I mentioned moments ago, one lap down. Brazil had somewhat identical results. Crashed his car in practice, suffered a 10th-place grid penalty shortly after that using a backup car, and come race day just didn't have the pace to keep up with the front runners, even in the damp conditions. Outside of Shanghai and Brazil though, 2004 was all the same still a time to be a Michael Schumacher and Ferrari fan, considering they were in a class of their own for the 5th straight year, which leads me into Schumacher's stats from his 2004 season, going something like this. With an, at the time, like I mentioned earlier, an all-time race win record of 13 wins in a single season. Outside of those 13 race wins, collected 15 podiums along the way, along with 12 front row starts, 8 of them from the pole position, clocking in the most fastest laps of 10, leading for 682 laps out front, with an average start of 3.9, along with an average finish rate of 2.6, with just one did not finish. As the old saying goes, in order to be the best, you gotta beat the best. During the 5-year span of 2000 through 2004, Michael Schumacher was just simply the best and the man to beat, which frankly was next to impossible to beat more often than not, breaking records left and right, front center, even spicing up controversy along the way. Regardless, again, whether you love him or hate him, Michael Schumacher was the greatest during his time at Ferrari, picking up 5 championships with the team along the way. A class act driver and a class act champion. Through the good and the bad and the ugly, Michael Schumacher always found a way to rise to the occasion, which more often than not, he did. When it was all said and done by the end of 2004, Michael Schumacher beat his teammate Barrichello by a margin of 34 points. Schumacher with 148 points to Barrichello's score of 114. As far as the constructors go, Ferrari won it by default, with a score of 262 points, compared to BAR's score of 119 points. 143 points separating the two teams. On the other note, if we combine Michael Schumacher's stats from all 5 of his Ferrari championship seasons from 2000 through 2004, Schumacher during that time span recorded 48 wins, 66 podiums, 56 front row starts, 40 pole positions, 27 fastest laps, led for 2,628 laps out front, along with 8 did not finishes, But aside from that, along with a score of a combined 616 points. Those numbers right there, when you look at it right then and there, night and day, define Michael Schumacher's dominance within the 2000 through 2004 time span. 5 seasons of race wins and podiums on a very consistent basis, especially in 2002. 5 seasons of being untouched, powerful, unstoppable. And there you have it, a rundown on Michael Schumacher's championship seasons with the Scuderia. If you like what you've seen, click that like button to show this video love and support. If you've really liked what you've seen, hit that red subscribe button so you'll stay up to date with more Formula 1 and other motorsport content. And to those who haven't subscribed yet and are possibly doing so right now, and to those who are already subscribed but haven't done so, I recommend turning on that bell so that way you'll be notified the split second a new video is released. But until then, I, Turn 4 Productions, signing off the mic, as always, and until next time and further notice, peace out, stay safe, and have a good one.
The only colour to be seen in today is Ferrari red. How do they do it?
It's just an amazing group of people who support each other, work with each other, have the same objectives and get on with it. And it's something I've never experienced before, and we're seeing the results.